Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the channel if you're new here. My name is JoJo. Here on this channel we talk about seasonal anime, and today we're here to talk all about the first episode of Appare-Ranman. But before we get into the video proper, I do want to let you all know that if you would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Appare-Ranman video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. This is likely going to be the last video covering a brand new series to Spring Anime. I think this is just about my entire lineup, and we are ending this new series of brand new videos that we're covering here on the channel on an incredibly good note. I was a little bit concerned since it is PA Works, who I do like for the most part. Some series that I really enjoy that they've done have been stuff like Sakura Quest. I really liked Another, although I think I'm the only one who liked Another. And Charlotte, I didn't really dig, but I thought the colors and the characters were kind of neat. They've also done stuff like Glass Slip and Fairy Gone, which don't really instill great confidence. But that's not to worry, because Appare-Ranman is friggin' dope. I really like this show. Also, just gonna go ahead and say this now. Insert obligatory Wacky Racers and or Steel Ball Run reference. There, I got that out of the way. I bet you people are still gonna make those references in the comments regardless, so it is what it is. I mean, hell, even the show makes a JoJo's reference at the end. You cannot tell me that at the very end, Kosame's "Oh my god" was not a Joseph Joestar reference. They know. They know this is very Steel Ball Run meets Wacky Racers. And honestly, I'm kind of all about it. Let's actually go ahead and dig into something that I really want to talk about in regards to the premiere, and that is the structure of the premiere. Obviously, there is going to be some discussion of color, so yes, it is in fact color time or design time, whatever we're calling it, but that's later on in the video. First, I actually want to talk a little bit about the insanely wacky and yet really fun plot that seems to be sort of taking over, right? Because we open with this cold open of the actual race itself starting up. So we actually get to see the kickoff to what is going to be the big adventure. The first episode and likely the next episode, maybe even the one after, are all going to be, I assume, leading back to the start of the race. And I think in this case, normally a cold open is good and bad, right? If you do the whole we drop you right into the action and then we go back, let's go back, let's see what happened. That can be annoying for sure, but here I think it's needed just to show you what the series is ultimately going to become and focus on. Because if you just started with Appare and Kosame hanging out in Japan, it wouldn't have really worked, as it's not really what the series is ultimately going to become, judging off the OP. It's mostly going to be about the Trans-America race, right? So they want to focus on the race itself, but we have to establish how these two end up in America in the first place. So I do think in this case the cold open is absolutely needed, and there's this real sense of not only adventure, but also a sense of a mostly funny sort of fate at play. Because Kosame basically gets roped into this by his own klutziness and his own need for structure. He's a very he's not having any of Appare's stuff. He's basically playing straight man to Appare's goofy character. Although Appare's not really a goofy character himself. It's actually Kosame who's more of the nervous wreck type character. Easiest way to explain it, actually. Appare is sort of like Miguel, and Kosame is sort of like Tulio. Only Appare is the one who comes up with all the cool plans, and Kosame just, stresses a lot. And it actually does kind of give me El Dorado vibes, sort of, in the sense that it is this sort of adventure spurred on by accidentally ending up in a place you didn't mean to begin. And it's really, really fun. I think the other great thing about the structure of the show is the music. It actually cleverly starts off with a lot of sort of string instruments really fitting the Japan aesthetic, And then once we get to C, you start hearing a little bit more of the wind instruments, and then eventually it becomes a sort of jazzy, sort of upbeat, sort of plucky song by the time we get to America at the end of the episode. That's not to say that we don't hear a jazz influence throughout the beginning parts of the episode. We do, but I do think Evan Call's soundtrack here is very appropriate, and I do think the man has really sort of held up that reputation that Evan Call has built up for himself. Since, if you don't know, this is the dude who does the Violet Evergarden series, and the music in Violet Evergarden is really stellar. And I do think that the music in Appare-Ranman very much is the same. I do think Call's soundtrack perfectly fits whatever scene it needs to be in, and the visuals I think is the most interesting element, in as much as the visuals are sound. There is some CG in here, but it doesn't feel like annoying, like it doesn't stand out in a way that's sort of jarring. Even in a show that I like, most recently I'm thinking of Balance Unlimited, there's a scene where there's like a CG car and it looks really out of place and kind of bad. Whereas in Appare-Ranman, there is CG cars, obviously, it's a race, but they don't stand out to the point where it's obstructing anything. And I would actually say that that's the same for basically all the art. The character art, the background art, and the CG, they all look good. In fact, they all look pretty damn great, but they don't always blend the best, and I don't want anyone to assume that I'm just gushing about the art and not noticing that they don't really blend all that well. I do think PA Works' art in this series is easily the strength and also sort of the weakness, because again, they don't really blend, but the background art is so friggin' pretty, the character designs are so great, and the CG genuinely looks really good. Do they blend all the time? Not really, but at the same time, it's not so distracting that it pulls you out of the episode. You just kind of notice like, oh, the characters really stand out on that background, or like, oh, the CG kind of doesn't blend as well with the characters or the background or whatever. So no, the art doesn't blend the best, but it does look pretty damn good. And speaking of the art, yes, that's right, it's finally time. Let's go ahead and talk about some character designs. Yeah, it wouldn't be a video of mine if we didn't start gushing about character designs, now would it? Let's go ahead and start with Appare himself. I gotta say, Appare as a character is really interesting as well. Natsuke Hane being sort of surprising in this role. Just based off the character himself, it's not a role I would typically associate with Hane. Hane being the voice actor for characters like Tanjiro and Kaneki, Appare sort of stands apart as not exactly a role I would typecast Hane as, but I do think his voice actually really works for the character. And the character's design is particularly interesting. It's particularly good. Basically, we have Appare with his sort of messy red and white hair, which of course is meant to demonstrate that Appare is Canadian. No, that's not actually what it's meant to demonstrate, but he may as well be. I mean, he's definitely not, but it'd be cool if he was. I don't know what I'm going on about, but Appare's red and white hair is actually meant to demonstrate, in my opinion, a combination of two things: passion and purity. And I say that because the character is very much shown to have this genuine need to pursue STEAM work, right? Like, he's really interested in STEAM technology. He's really interested in technology in general. And he was fascinated by this by the time he first saw steamboats crossing the ocean. And it sort of ignited something in him, and he wanted to not only know how to make stuff like that, but also how to sail across the ocean and maybe go see the moon and what's even beyond that. And it sort of gave him this earnest drive for adventure, essentially. And the red and white hair could very much also be a hint towards that. Red is, of course, a color of passion, right? It's a very intense, strong color, usually associated with courage, but in this case, it can also be associated with passion, that being Appare's passion for STEAM work. But the white is interesting as well, because white hair in many cases is sort of shown to be a ethereal type of hair color, but in this case it also could be a sign of purity, this sort of untainted, innocent need to create STEAM work, right? Because he doesn't do this out of malice. He's not trying to hurt anybody through his technology. He's not trying to do it out of greed. It's just a genuine need to explore and sort of appease this appetite for creation. And I think his hair is, ironically enough, the thing that stands out the most in blends the most with our sort of color theory, color symbolism type of discussion. As for the pink yukata that he wears, it could represent a sort of immature side to him, as he doesn't really seem to take on any sort of like real world weight and responsibility. He tends to kind of push responsibility onto others, and so the pink yukata could represent a immature side to him, possibly. As for his eye colors, they're very like stone blue. They're almost borderline gray. And it made it sort of difficult to read until you see Kosami, who is, by contrast, a very, very basic character design, right? He basically looks like, kind of like a typical Japanese character in this time period, right? He's got like the basic yukata, basic outfit, basic colors. He's basic. But what stands out the most, especially in connection to Appare's stone blue eyes, is his own eye color, is Kosame's brown eyes. He's our brown-eyed guy, and I will tell you why that's important. Because by connection, if the eyes are the window to the soul, like I've been saying, and they're sort of meant to represent like the inner thoughts, then the stone blue eyes for Appare could mean that it's sort of hard to read him as a person, whereas Kosame, you know exactly what he's about the instant you see him. And what you see is a reliable and steady soul. And you get that since brown is typically known as the most stable of the colors. It's the most reliable, basic, but at the same time, there's a strength to that reliability. And I think in this series, we're going to see that Kosame is easily a perfect match for Appare, and somebody like a figure that Appare needs, in the sense that not only is he steady and stern, but he is reliable. And I think Appare will come to find comfort in Kosame and sort of get a, I don't want to say like a fatherly or brotherly figure, but not even mentor, just a sort of person that he can like find comfort in and be his partner on this grand adventure. And I think the fact that his character design is otherwise sort of plain is meant to represent that. He is, by comparison to Appare, much more, straight-laced and sort of typical. But I think in this case it actually does work for him. And the fact that his eyes are so brown, they actually sort of show like that he's almost overly steady. And we see that when he like freaks out when he gets on the steamboat and he accidentally launches them out to sea. Like, he's so steady it almost goes the full circle. It's why I compared him to Tullio, because in El Dorado, Tullio is a character whose panicky side almost takes over him at times. And I get that a lot with Kosame as well. Regardless, to wrap things up, I really think this is a super strong start and a great introduction to these two characters, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where the series goes from here. There's tons of other characters that I didn't get to. I'm going to do their own sort of character design analysis when we actually get introduced to them in any specific episode. So yeah, look forward to more color designs if you like that, or be annoyed if you're one of the people who don't, because I do know some of you hate these, but I'm sorry, I like doing them. With that said, everybody, I'm going to wrap up my thoughts here. Yeah, I absolutely love this. I am totally covering Appare-Ranman. Also, apologies, there is no Wave Listen to Me video this week, because this week Final Fantasy dropped. This is the first day, and I kind of only want to work on one video because I really want to get back and play Final Fantasy VII, so yeah. And that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, then by all means hitting that like button and leaving a comment down below is a great way to help out this channel, as it pleases the almighty YouTube algorithm. So if you choose to do so, kudos to you. And if you're feeling extra supportive today, you can go ahead and check out all the links in the description. One goes to my Twitter, another one is to our Discord server, another one to our merch store if you feel like grabbing yourself a mug, and of course, our Patreon page. And speaking of the Patreon page, I do want to give a big thank you to those of you in the T Squadron who support this channel month to month. Let's go ahead and do the Earl Grey shoutouts. Zevi, Andrew W, Branson C, Bria Rose, Calvin A, Crowbar of Irony, Daniel G, Digger the Fox, Dominic G, Emily, Ionos, Urza, Ginkotaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria T, Marshall B, Mater, Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Stephen G, Sakochi, The Suavest Orange, Tristan G, and Veridon. Thanks so much for your continued support over on Patreon, everybody, and if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page. That is a huge way to support the channel. And again, be sure to check out the other stuff in the Discord as well. Go join our Discord. It is now public. You can all join. Everybody can hop in the Discord. Follow me on Twitter if you want me to ramble at you even more. And until next time, you stay classy, AnyTube, and wash your dang hands.